everyone, this is Prachitivari for SME Futures, and today we are going to understand more about 5G spectrum auction and 5G services from Sylwia Kechiche, who is the principal analyst at Ookla. Thank you, Sylwia, for joining us. Sylwia, talk about the 5G auction, which is going to be held in July.
The much anticipated 5G auction is going to take place at the end of July. There was quite a lot of discussion backwards and forth between the regulator and the operators to actually discuss A, the spectrum pricing, and B, the access that enterprises could be given to spectrum directly. So it's number one, the recommendation to reduce the spectrum pricing in the mid-band, so 3.6 to 3.9 spectrum band, has been accepted. So this has decreased by around 36%. It is still higher than other countries that have assigned the spectrum, such as Portugal, France, and so on, but it's a step in the right direction. Furthermore, what we're going to see the award of the 700 megahertz spectrum band, which is the low band, the so-called coverage band, that ensures that the areas across the widest spread can be connected. And we're also going to award of millimeter wave spectrum band, so the high band, the 26 and above spectrum band. What is important to note when it comes to millimeter wave, that's very high throughput, but a very reduced ability to cover spaces. So that's very particular use cases that they can be useful. And there was quite a bit of discussion between the satellite industry and the mobile industry, because the 28 gigahertz spectrum band is quite often used for satellite, and it's part of the 3GPP standards. So that's about the pricing and the spectrum band. Number two, removal of the usage fees. So operators no longer have to pay spectrum usage fees that account for between 3 to 5% of the annual revenue. And last but not least, the topic of private wireless networks or non-captive networks, how it's called otherwise. So there was quite a lot of discussion between the Operator Association in India and the regulator, and also the Broadband Forum, with discussion and with arguments being said that this actually going to reduce the opportunity for operators to take advantage of 5G. However, the use of our spectrum for non-public, for private networks has been improved, and this can be done in multiple ways. The spectrum auction will take place at the end of July, with rollout starting in latter part, so August, September. Operators are all ready for that. They've been trying and testing and partnering with across the ecosystem, with the vendors, with the chipset manufacturers, to be ready to roll out as soon as possible.
Sylwia, please elaborate on the satellite internet in India.
It's a very interesting question, because what we see at the moment, there's already satellite internet in India, mostly offered by Hughes to enterprises. So, enterprises in remote areas, enterprises that need always-on connectivity, such as banking, that do use internet satellite. What we see, however, is entry of low Earth orbit satellites, so the likes of the OneWeb and so on, that will come into the market. They're still pending regulatory approval, and there's quite a lot of discussions currently happening to what is the best way for them to address the market. What we see in terms of satellite is because of the low broadband penetration of households, so 7.5% of households have access to fixed internet.
What are the Ookla's key business strategies for the market in India?
To analyze, optimize, and understand the networks in terms of how network is performing, what are the speeds, what's the latency, what is the availability, so mix of coverage and access that actually end users have. And what we also see, we ask a lot of interesting questions in terms of what do users think of the given network provider. So consumer sentiment. We also look what's the video experience users have. So then you can actually compare and contrast. So these are the tools that regulators, telcos can actually use to understand the quality of experience for subscribers, and then address and have a look of how to offer best-in-class services. But that's Speedtest Intelligence, the testing your network, be it on the mobile device, on the fixed device.
Can you throw some light on the internet speed trends in India?
So what we do publish at Ookla is Ookla Global Index, and then we measure across hundreds of millions of tests being done by real people in real time, measure performance of mobile network and fixed network. So looking at the speeds that was published in May, we can see that India is on the 118th place across mobile speeds. So that's an increase from 115 in April. And some of the reasons for that, and because operators are getting ready for 5G network deployments, they're already upgrading the LTE network, and they're working really hard to address some of the challenges that they currently are. And we're talking about the median speeds around 14 megabits per second download speed. And the reason why we talk about median, we're trying to illustrate the real-time experience that users have on the networks. And in terms of the fixed speeds, we're looking at the median download speed of around 48 megabits per second, which puts India at the 76th place around the world. So again, we measure it, we're very responsive. As soon as we see any changes, this is reflected in our ranking. But again, with 5G auction coming, we're going to see speeds increasing simply because of the access to different spectrum bands that enable more efficient rollout.
Thank you so much for your time, Sylwia. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, pleasure.